Everybody. Welcome to Families Grow Together show number 2. Today, we are talking about communication, the beginning and the end. Wonder why this topic? Communication is at the center of every human relationship. It's the center of children's learning and development. And today, we're going to explore communication. Nelly is going to do us a presentation, and we hope you will enjoy this show. Over to you, Nelly.
Okay, hello everyone. Welcome to day 2 of our show. Let me just load up my slides. Okay, so today's topic is communication, the beginning and the end. So for the format, we will just start with the agenda. Types of communication, importance of communication, the barriers to communication, how to communicate effectively. At the end, we'll have discussions. And if you have any questions, you can put the questions on the chat and we will respond to them as we go along. So it's not just for us to be talking here, get involved as well. So before we start, what actually is communication? Because we communicate regularly, but then what is it? So communication is the exchange of information in either way. In communication, there are two participants. You have the sender of the information and the receiver. In communication, it might hurt, it might heal, it might offer encouragement as well as offer desperation. So then, what are the types of communication? The two main communication types are verbal and non-verbal. For the verbal communication, you have like writing, talking, messaging, just many different ways, the way you can verbalize it, use words. On the other hand, you have non-verbals like body language, voice, the tone, your appearance. We always communicate, whether we talk or we don't talk, because sometimes it is easily misinterpreted that someone staying quiet means that they are not communicating. Whereas we communicate all the time. Being silent is another form of communication. And your body posture says a lot. Whether you smile, whether you frown, you fold your arms, it sends out various messages. And again, that is communication. So be aware that even if you don't talk, you are still sending information out by your body language. So then, it's talking about communication. Why is it important? Imagine, just think of your own situation. Was there a time you thought that you said something, you were passing an information, you were the sender, but then the information you got from the receiver, you felt that that person did not receive the information, or it was not the information you sent? So communication is important, so it can reduce misunderstandings. Because if we are passing on information that it's not clear, we give a lot of room for misinterpretation, and it comes with so many problems. Importance of communication is it builds empathy, because you can actually understand what the other person is talking about. Sometimes we understand not just the words, but sometimes the silences. because there's more meaning in silences than even in spoken words. It limits judgment and assumptions. Imagine sometimes you have something to say, but for one reason or the other, you are selective of what you want to, the information you want to give out. But then the other person says, what you are saying, you think of it that what the person has reflected back to you is not in line with what you said, but actually is what they heard. So if we talk clearly, it will help to limit judgments and assumption. Another importance is it improves and maintains close relationship. Again, it goes back to that understanding. Developing and maintaining friendships. The baseline for friendship is understanding. And again, communication is the key. And without communication, it gives room for misjudgment. It also helps in family functioning and groups, and in maintaining and succeeding on your job, because you need to express yourself. You need to pass on information as well as receive information. So remember, communication is two-way. You receive and you give. So in your life, just think, what are some of the barriers in your communication? Or what have you observed from other people that hinder their communication? Probably they give information, but you as a receiver, you don't understand. What do you think could be those barriers? On here, I've listed four different categories of barriers. I would just like you to write on the chat what your barriers are. You have physical barriers. It could be noise. Just a common example. Say you are in a market and you are talking with someone. The market is usually very, very noisy because there's so many people interacting and doing their stuff. That noise is a barrier to communication. So just think in your own situation, what are the physical barriers that you experience in communication? There's also psychological. It could be that you are stressed. You have things on your mind, thinking of what you will do, of trying to figure out a solution to a problem. So your mind is not where you are. Physically, you are there, but mentally, you are somewhere else trying to figure out your problem. So that is psychological barriers. Just think of yours or think of the ones that you have experienced from other people. Another category of barriers to communication is language. We might be communicating, yes, but the speaker might be saying something, but then the listener does not understand because of the language barrier. Let's say English, like we are here in England, it is commonly assumed that everyone in England speaks English because English is the language they speak in England. But believe me or not everyone in England speaks English. Some people have come and adopted English as the second language. Some are here in England for years, but they don't still speak English. So it's not to assume that everyone understands your language. You need to find out. So again, that is a barrier to communication. And the last category is cultural differences. For the cultural differences, think of yours. Think of what you have observed from other people. I remember growing up in my culture, it was when you're speaking to people or to adults, don't look at them in the eye. But then when I came to the UK, I found it really, really hard because when I'm speaking to my seniors at work or even my colleague, I look down. But then I was shocked the first day I heard that I am not confident, and I could not understand where that was coming from. And then I tried to ask so I could understand where this aspect of lack of confidence was coming from. And they explained, they said, I'm talking to people, but I'm not looking at them on their faces or in their eyes. And I'm thinking, oh, I took note of that. I said, okay, that's from my culture, because looking at someone in the eye, especially an adult or an elderly person, is a sign of disrespect. Another aspect still in line with that cultural differences is still at work. When I was speaking or when I was in communication with someone, I would want to wait and listen until the person finishes, and I will not interrupt. Again, I was told that I don't have confidence because when someone finished talking, I just need to get in. And I was like, for me, I need to wait like a second or so to give that person space. Probably they were just taking a break or just thinking, but it went that I did not have confidence. So I was really pleased to get the feedback, and I had to work on the feedback, and I explained that those were cultural differences, but it was not that I lacked confidence in my job or presenting information. So you take note, and if you have comments or feedback about confidence, when you know it is down to cultural differences, work on it or try to explain that, and don't just explain and sit, but work on it to improve, because all we are doing is improving on ourselves. So then, how to communicate effectively? To communicate effectively, there's something called the 7 C's of communication. And they are: be concise, be clear, concrete, courteous, correct, complete, and considerate. So when you are passing on information, be assertive. Don't doubt yourself. Am I correct? Am I not correct? No, that one, it shows a lot of doubt in yourself. Be assertive. Say what you mean. Because sometimes we have different things going on in our heads, but because of fear, we say something else. That is not being assertive. And when you don't say things the way you intend, you can either be passive aggressive because you have something else to say, but what is coming out from your mouth is different because of fear. So then you can be like, throw the glass, throw the books, throw the pen, because anger within you. So be assertive. You need to train yourself to say things the way they are, so that you don't go after and you blame yourself that, oh, I could have said this, I could have said that. And then you spend hours and hours blaming yourself and beating yourself up for what you did not say. And when that same situation repeats itself, if you've not worked on yourself, you will still not be assertive. You will still not say the things that you wanted to say. So just be cautious of that and work on yourself, because no one will do that for you. Another one is to keep stress in check. Stress influences communication in the sense that when you are stressed, you have many thoughts going on in your head. But then when you want to speak, your words come out, you pick different words, but then it doesn't make a sentence, a correct sentence. And I know it is so common, because the mind is like so many things, but then the mouth cannot say all the things at once. So then just take, for example, when you are angry or when you are upset or annoyed on something and you want to talk, the words that come out from your mouth doesn't make a sentence. Trust me, if you want to try this, one day when you feel angry, record yourself. Or you can just think of a situation that you were really angry recently. You will be able to replicate those same feelings and then talk as if you're talking to someone, but then record it. And then after you record it, stay for some hours and listen to it. You will understand how other people receive your messages, and then you have the opportunity to work on it. The next point is pay attention to nonverbal signs. We talked about this, body language. If you stand and you fold your arms, it gives information like, I'm not welcoming, I don't want anyone. Some people like standing and folding their arms. And you might notice that sometimes when you stand like that, people avoid you and you start thinking, have I got a body odor? Have I not had a bath? You start judging yourself. But no, that's not the case. It's because you are signaling with your folded arms that you don't want to be disturbed. You are not involved. So that is why people pass by you. So it's just for you to be aware of it. You might be talking, and let's say I'm sitting here now and I'm sat like this. None of you will want to listen to me because just looking at me, you'll feel like, oh, she's really tired. She's not bothered. She doesn't even want to be here. So those are signals you need to take care or be aware of and observe it in other people, and then you make the change. The next is become an engaged listener. When you are listening, don't just hear the words that people say. Be present. Listen, actually, because sometimes the words that are not said carry the main messages. Listen attentively. Be involved in that conversation. Don't hurry to interrupt. Just listen. Sometimes people don't like it when there's silence, but there is power in silence. Observe that silence. The next is eye contact. I talked about eye contact previously, but yeah, look at people in the eye. It's not to stare at people, but it's just like a glance. Sometimes if you don't feel confident to look at people in the eye, look at them at the corner of their eye so you are not staring in their eyes. Just look at them at the corner. It will seem as if you are looking at them directly in the eye, and that one, you have a tick. Yeah, he or she is confident in what she or he is saying. The next is visualize what the speaker is saying. This one is very important for me because I am a visual learner. I am a visual person. When we are talking, I visualize things because in that way, that is how I remember what that message is. And after, I can just sit, and if I want to recall that message, I will visualize, go in my space, and I'll see that thing, and I will be able to remember what that conversation was all about. So this is just for me. People have different styles, which is why it is really, really important to understand yourself. Self-awareness is critical. And the last one is do not interrupt. I know I've talked about this, so I'll just pass by. So then, it was just a quick intro to communication. So this is the conclusion. You need to spend time, effort, and be willing to develop the soft skills to be an effective communicator. It's not just talking and ranting and shouting at people. No, no. Like, one of our values is integrity. You need to respect yourself and the people you communicate with. This does not matter the age or the size or nothing. It's just a person in front of you. Deal with that person with integrity. You have dignity. So speak to a child in a respectable way as you will speak to an adult. Don't differentiate. Don't speak to your child or to a younger person or to your junior as if they don't matter. That has an impact on their self-esteem. And intentionally, you wouldn't want to dampen someone's self-esteem. And be constructive and intentional when communicating. This will go back to being assertive. Say what you have in mind to talk about. So this is me done with the short presentation. If you have any questions, if you have any ideas, anything you want to share, those on Facebook, put your question, put your comments there, and I'll just exit from this. I'll stop sharing my screen now and we'll go to the discussion page. So thank you for watching this short presentation.
Wow, 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 wow. Thank you, Nelly, for that presentation. That was very rich. That was actually a good and concise description of what communication is and how important it is for us to communicate and communicate effectively, because it's not only, as you said, only important for us to talk. We have to be speaking in the right way, in the right manner, respectfully to one another, and get our message across. So that was really good. When you were talking, all I could think about were the little ones that I work with and how we communicate with them. So yes, during this discussion, we are going to explore some aspects of communication that involve kids. So yes, Nelly, thank you so much. How do you want to proceed with the discussion?
Yeah. So I will just explain a little bit why, like the title is Communication, the Beginning and the End. Communication is very, very important. It's a core soft skill because we communicate in everything that we do. We communicate with others, and most importantly, we communicate with ourselves. And what you tell, the way you talk to people reflects the way you talk to yourself, and even worse. So which is why this topic for today is communication, the beginning and the end. Because if you have, or if you develop poor communication skills, then it will impact on your relationships, relationship with yourself, relationships with others, and so many aspects of your life. But then if you develop better communication skills, it is not late. There's always a beginning. Yes, you might have spent so many years talking to people like they don't matter because of that. The easiest or the common comment I hear is, but well, that's how I was brought up. Yeah, that's how you were brought up. You were being spoken to like you were nothing. But those who were speaking to you, it was not intentional. It was the level of information they have. But you now, it is your responsibility to make that shift, to make that change. Learn to communicate effectively. And if you learn to communicate effectively, you'll realize that the way you talk to yourself, the way you communicate with others will be different, and the relationships will be healthier. And people will want to share information with you because they identify that you are receptive of their information rather than just dismissing them or making them to feel that they don't matter. So that is why the topic is communication, the beginning and the end. So thank you, Aqua.
Thank you, Nelly. Right, it is important. We know that communication is at the center of all learning and development from the very get-go with kids, because if children cannot communicate, then they'll struggle with other aspects of their lives, like the relationships, they'll struggle with their schooling, they'll struggle with reading and writing. So communication is at the center of, in short, is at the center of all children's learning and development. So one thing that I wanted to share or talk about was the fact that the definition of communication that was given here is the exchange and receiving of information. That implies a few things. Implies that somebody is sending out information and somebody is receiving the information. What I would like to know, Nelly, is it important to know whether the person you're speaking to understands what you're saying? Is that important in communication?
Thanks for that question, Aqua. Communication, you have the responsibility to ensure that whatever information you are giving out is clear, is concise. So that is your responsibility.
Okay.
But then the other person's responsibility, you are not responsible for what that person chooses to hear. Because if you work on, or if you know that it is, the information is clear and concise, then it is the other person's choice of what they want to hear. But then if you realize that the information that you give out is different from what the receiver heard, ask for feedback, because it is from the feedback that you will learn. Ask them, what was it? How did you say it? Just get feedback so you understand why they did not understand the information the way you sent it out. Probably you thought that you sent out the information clearly. I remember, like with you, Aqua, just last week, we were having this conversation and I had so much, I was really, really excited. And I was like, and then Aqua just said, Nelly, hold on. And she told me that she did not understand what I was talking about, because I would start a sentence and I would not finish and I would go to the next and I would go to the next. And it's because the information I was given was not concise, because I was so excited. I had so many information just running through my mind and I wanted to give out those information as they were coming up in my head, but I couldn't. So then, because I got that feedback from Aqua that she could not understand, she could identify that I started a sentence, but like mid-sentence, I started another sentence. And then I was like, oh, thank you for that. And then when I reflected, I realized that that is what I was doing. And then I was able to like adjust and then remind myself to start one sentence and finish it. So the sender is responsible for the quality of their messages, but then they are not responsible, or they are partly responsible for what the receiver hears. But again, the receiver might have their own things, like we talked about the barriers. Receiver might have so many things going on in their mind whereby they are not present mentally in that conversation. So then it's good to get feedback. So you make that adjustment, because it might not be from the sender, it might be from the receiver.
Okay, that is great. And thank you for reminding me of that incident. It not only reminds me of what we discussed together, it reminds me of one of my daughters. She starts conversations in her head and finishes them out loud. And you're like, what are you talking about? Because she'll come to you and like, also, and you're like, also what? And you're like, what are you talking about? And if you don't know the people with whom you are communicating, then you will struggle to understand them as well. Now, I'll always go back to the children's level, because sometimes what we do as adults is a reflection of what kids do. And sometimes what kids do as well is a reflection of what we as adults do. Now, children need to be able to understand language before they will be able to use it. So if they do not understand, one of the barriers to understanding language is perceiving it in the first place. So you talked about the physical barriers, or some of the barriers to communication, to effective communication. For children, it could be that they're hard of hearing. Or adults, you could be talking and, you know, expressing yourself to this adult in front of you without even realizing that they're not even perceiving what you're saying because they are hard of hearing. So one of the physical barriers to hear to communication is the lack of auditory senses, that you hard of hearing. And so when we're trying to communicate with people, we have to know to whom we are talking. We have to know what they're capable of understanding, their level of understanding as well, and the level of development. Because going back to children, if I'm talking to a child who is 1 year old as if I'm talking to a 5-year-old, definitely that child will not understand me. So when we're communicating as adults as well, we have to think about the level of understanding or the level of maturity of the person to whom we are communicating, because we can actually send out a concise message, make it clear. What are some of the C's? Give a complete and concrete piece of information to somebody who is not at that level, who cognitively cannot understand what you're saying. So you were effective in your communication, you were clear in your communication, you were concise and all those things, but that person didn't perceive what you were saying because they are not at that level. So it is important that when we're communicating with people, we think about who we are communicating to or with. What is their level of understanding, and break down the information so that they too can understand. So that is just one thing that I wanted to add to this conversation. So Nelly.
I think just before you ask your question, just at the back of what you've said, I think that is very, very important, because sometimes, like, I am a qualified social worker and I work with children and families. And I realized that my communication at some point was not effective, because the way I talk to my children, they have a different level of understanding as compared to some of the children that were older than some of my children. But then I communicated to the level that I was communicating with my children. But sometimes, I was quick to identify that the way I was communicating was not effective, because, like, talking to a child, they kept on asking, "Pardon, can you say that again?" And then I was thinking, but how can they not hear me that sat next to me? But then I realized that it's the way the level was higher than the children's levels. So then it's to bring that down, because age does not mean that they have a standard level of communication. No, it's an individual. Just like what Akwa said, when you are communicating, know the people you are communicating with. Some people, you might have to use photographs to, like, those who have impairments, show them photographs, because that is what they'll easily identify with. So know the people you are communicating, know their needs, because you cannot send a letter to a family who do not read English if the letter is written in English, because one of the cases I worked with was in that light, where this one was in regards to housing. Housing kept on sending letters upon letters upon letters to this family. Unfortunately, none of the family members could read English, and they kept the letters in a pile. And they were notifying this family that their tenancy had to end. But because they were not reading, they took no action until one morning they got up, and whether they were
bailiffs,
sheriffs, or who, some people came.
Bailiffs.
Bailiffs, okay. Bailiffs came and at the door, and this woman was panicking. And good thing, unfortunately, I was at that address that day for a visit, and then the sheriff came, and I was like, "What is the case, or what is the matter?" And then they explained. So then I was using an interpreter. So the interpreter asked this lady, explain it. And then she brought a pile of letters. None of them were open. They were just there. And then I took the pile of letters and I showed the officer. I said, this is it. She doesn't know English. I said, in your initial assessment, that is something you could have taken into consideration. Did you find out if she understood English? And they said no, but she signed the document. I said, of course, if you put a pen and show her the sign, she will sign, but she didn't know what she was signing. So yeah, I just thought I should chip that in there. So thank you. You can ask a question now.
Right, thank you. Right, so we from what you have said, it shows that there's so many things that we need to take into consideration when we're communicating. At the beginning, you said there were two types of communication, verbal and non-verbal, yeah? And as and the information that you're talking about will pass through written by written means. And these people, it could have been that it was sent to a blind person. That would have been another barrier to the communication because they wouldn't have been able to read because it wasn't in Braille. So it is important that we think carefully when we're communicating with people and to assess, as you said, who am I communicating with? What is the level of understanding? What are some of the barriers that are there to their communication? You mentioned some of the barriers. I want us to talk about the barriers to communication. You gave one example of a physical barrier, like being in a noisy environment. That is very important. And what I wanted to bring up with, and as an aspect of a physical barrier to communication is distance. Let us talk about distance, because we communicate with people far and wide. I'm here in Middleton, you're over there in Ashton, and we're communicating. So what are some of the aspects of distance that can be a barrier to communication?
Okay. Thanks for that question. If we go far back, we would realize, I can't remember how far back that could be, but a few decades back, when you had someone who was far away, you had to write a letter and post the letter. And it could take months for the letter to get to that person. But at that time, it was okay. Because at that time, that was the only means that was. But now, because of improved technology, we don't know where people are watching this Facebook Live from. It could be anywhere in the world. We don't know. So when it comes to distance in communication, I believe there are many, many different aspects. Because you can be, say, 2,000 miles apart, but still feel very connected. In the same light, you can be sat next to someone, but you are miles apart mentally. So there are so many factors that get into distance and communication. I remember there's a saying that distance or that silence does not. It's about silence and distance. So it is, do you know that one?
Go on.
Distance does not separate people. Yeah, distance does not separate people. It is silence.
Silence
that
does.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So going back to your question, it's what are the intentions? Probably the sender wants to send information, but the receiver might not want to receive the information. If you don't get feedback, you will not know. So it's to find out where that breakage is. So I cannot give you a specific answer because it's very, very wide.
Okay, thank you for that. That is so true. Because like you said, you can be in the same room with people and be very lonely and not be able to communicate and be very far apart, really. And you can be with somebody you can have a friend across the world with whom you communicate and you understand each other. You may not talk for a month, and the minute you pick up the phone, it's as if you talked yesterday. So that is where you know that you have a correct, good link with that person. Now, so another thing that I wanted to talk about physical barriers when we talk on the phone as well, and not on video. Like I can see you, I can see a facial expression, and I can see, I can read your non-verbal communication when you're talking and seeing somebody on video. But when you're talking over the phone and you cannot see that person, a lot of people hide behind the phone to say things that they wouldn't say in front of the person. And it is important that we know that to know that even on the phone, we can communicate effectively and put emotion through. People can read your emotion through your tone of voice. And a barrier could be that they may want to receive the information that you have, but the accent distorts the message. And when you were talking about talking to children who do not understand at your level, that's one of the things that came to mind as well. Given that we are all foreigners, we may be talking when I came to this country, and English people would talk to me. I spent all my time saying sorry, sorry, because the accent I could not understand. They had to speak slowly. Same and vice versa. When I would speak, they were like, sorry, sorry. Can you say that again? You know, so it is important for us also to know that our accents also can be a barrier to communication, and we have to try and be as clear as possible. So
yeah,
go on.
yeah, I think with that one, I think it's really common with our accents when you realize that people find it hard to understand, is to slow down, because if you slow down when you're speaking, people can easily understand as compared to when you're speaking really fast. Because like the common way Africans are being described is that they talk as if they are fighting, because they just run a lot. They talk so fast. But then if you slow down, people will actually understand what you are saying, and it will be like limiting the barriers to communication.
Okay, that is true. Slowing down is important. And every time you say something that strikes me, I always go back to the kids that I work with. I always go back to children who are beginning to learn how to talk, who are beginning to develop their language skills and communication skills. Because when we communicate, and when you're working with families, as you said, you can work with families who are from a different background, who do not speak English. And it is important that you try and be as understanding as possible to their needs. Because if you see, I'll go back to children. If a child is trying to communicate with you, they're babbling and they're excited and they're telling you something and you do not understand, show interest. Make that person feel that they're important. So I want to ask a question. What is active listening?
So thank you for that question. Active listening is being present. Like we are talking now, I am being active in listening. Put all distractions away. Be present. Because when we are listening, I can hear what you say if I'm not actively listening. but then I miss out on certain things. Like you've talked about the vocal cues. If I only hear the words that you are saying, I would miss out on your breathing, especially if I'm not seeing you. Like on the phone, you talked about talking on the phone. There are a lot of cues that we pick up. So if one is being present, being effective, you hear what people are saying. You don't wonder, because sometimes when people are communicating, people listen not to understand. They listen to question, or they listen to bring their own points. Like, I like to observe. I observe a lot. Sometimes you see people talking and one person says something and the other person is like a battle to say, oh yeah, I had that kind of experience. That is not being an effective listener, because you are listening not to understand, but to bring up your own point. People talk because they want to pass on information. But then if you don't listen, probably you hear one sentence and it reminds you of your own experience. And because in this world now, it's also easy for people to compete in their miseries. So if you say, I did not have a good meal yesterday, the next person, instead of saying how they prepared a nice meal, they will come with something. Oh, you know what? A week ago or something, I did not even have water to drink. So that's what I mean by people are like competing to talk about their miseries. But it's not the case. So when you listen, be there to understand. Put all your own thoughts and judgments away and hear that person. When you listen effectively, you build a bond, because there's something called empathy. When you listen, when you empathize, you really understand, and there's a connection that is created between the two people talking. But if that is not present, you just hear words coming and going, and probably at the end of the conversation, you will just pick out one or two words and it will not make any sense. And again, barriers to communication. So I hope I've answered your question. Thank you. You are on mute.
Technology, here we go. Barriers to communication. Muting myself and talking to myself. Are you not understanding me? Because you couldn't hear what I was saying. So see, these things happen every day. Even though we think that we can communicate and communicate effectively, here we are with barriers between ourselves talking about communication. Yes.
Before you go, just one thing has come to mind that I would just like to talk. You know, now, just on one of the barriers to communication, now with technology, it's easy to text.
Yes.
And when you have auto type, so you might start typing a word and the auto comes and just types over their own suggested words. And you send a message, because mostly we don't have time to read over the message. But then the receiver replies, they don't understand what the message is. And probably it can just go on like, now you are arguing over something that it is typing error. So on that, I would encourage people to read their messages before you press the send button, because this texting has brought a lot of problems between people, because not that the messages they wanted to send was intentional the way it was sent, but because as they were typing, they were so fast. And sometimes we have like so many conversations at the same time. You want to send this to this person, that other person, so because you want to do things, so many things at the same time, and quick. Sometimes you might be shopping and you are texting just take time to read the message before you press the send button, because you are ensuring that the message you are sending is clear, and it will reduce misinterpretation and assumptions and misinformation. So I just thought I include that one before you proceed.
Thank you for bringing that up about text messaging. I was going to bring the text messaging up because sometimes people, instead of having difficult conversations like we used to do in the past, we send text messages because it's easy. You know, that person is not in front of you. You're not going to deal with their emotions right there and then. You just send a message. You know, sometimes we sit and send messages that if we sat in front of the person, we would think twice before even sending that message. And another aspect of messaging is that, as you said, you've talked about haste in sending messages. How many people have sent messages to the wrong people because they were rushing to send a message when they were trying to multitask? So it is really important for us to be careful with our communication, who we're communicating with, what type of language we're using in our communications, and the emotions that what we're saying evokes. The internet has made it possible for people to just say whatever they think. They can sit in the anonymity of their homes and just type things. We hear all about cyberbullying. We hear about how people are harassed online. We hear about bullying used to be in school and stay in school, but now it follows people into their homes because of technology, because of messaging apps, because of social media. So it is very important that we are mindful of what we say, the language that we use, and how we say it. And when we're talking about active listening, it is important to reflect on what that person has said. So if somebody, like we talked about eye contact, you talked about crossing your arms, your body language may tell people that I'm not ready to receive what you're saying here. Please don't talk to me, or get it over and done with. Looking at your watch when somebody is talking. You know, some of those things are barriers to communication, because somebody may really want to tell you something. They may be intent on telling you something, and emotionally they're struggling to bring it out. But our body language may make them either freeze or bring it out of them. So if we want to be effective, we want to be empathetic in the way we communicate with people, let us be open. Leave your body open, welcoming to whatever they're saying. It might be that they have information that will hurt you or that you're not ready to receive, but it is important that we give the person a chance to say what they're saying, and we receive it. Take the information, and try not to be in you cannot avoid stress when something bad information comes to you, but how we listen and how we reflect on what we have heard to that person is important, so that we get the right information. Because I can tell you, okay, let me just give an example. Nelly, can you imagine that our friend did this and that and the other, and then you're just like, what, really? You don't even sit there and first allow me to speak. You're already putting flames into it. So it is important that we sit and we are cool and calm and collected when we're communicating with somebody, so that we allow them to finish, and then we respond. We do not just react, because like the example I just said was a reaction. But if we want to respond to the information that has been given to us and make sure that we understand, right? You can say, let me try and understand what you've just said. Did I hear you right? Are you saying that this person did this and that and the other? Ask questions, make them clarify what they are trying to say, so that you know that the information that I'm getting is the right one. It's important to actively listen or be open to what they're saying. Encourage them. Smile. look at them in their faces and like, yes, prompt people to bring it out. Because I can remember when I went for the interview for the job that I'm currently doing. I've gone for the interview before and I didn't get it. And I was like, I do this job. I can do this job. Why didn't I get it? And I was given feedback. And so I prepared myself for the next round of the interview. And when I went, I had lots to say. But even then, I needed encouragement, because when you're in a situation of an interview, in a situation like that, you feel tense sometimes. But the people who were interviewing me were very welcoming. They made me feel relaxed. They prompted me. They gave me leading questions like, yes, what else do you think can help in that situation? If you're working with this family, what else do you think you can do? It makes you think. So it is important for us to ask questions when somebody sends us information, to clarify things so that we understand well before we respond to what they are saying.
Yeah.
So,
Thank you so much, Jaco. When you were talking, there were just so many things that came to mind, but I'm mindful of the time, so
yes.
I'll just be really brief.
Mm-hmm.
I think this one I'll say particularly to African families, African parents. The way we were brought up, our parents we saw our parents like authority figures, and the way or the representation we have of our parents and carers and adults in the family is impacting our relationships now as adults with people that we see as authority figures.
Yeah.
This one, I'm bringing this up, Aqua, because of the example you gave on your interview.
Mm-hmm.
Because it could be common for you to say, oh, it was the interview that made you tense. Yeah, actually. But actually, it's not.
Mm-hmm.
The interview was just a trigger to something that already existed, because in your mind, you have that differentiation that authority figures decide your life.
Mm.
But that one, it needs to go deeper and deeper, but not for today.
Not for today, yeah,
So,
definitely.
when you were talking before, two things came in mind. People pleasing. It is common to want to please people. If you are someone, or if you have learned to be assertive, you don't insult people. You say what you intend in a very constructive way. So you don't please people, because no matter what you do, when you send out information, you don't know what people's past experiences are. So in one way or the other, it will easily hurt someone. But if you are true and honest to yourself, you pass on that information in the purest form that you have. It don't matter, because you follow the 7 C's and you've passed on that information. And the last thing that I want to talk about is the way we've been raised in our society. We have developed a lot of fear. We have fear of rejection, fear of failure, fear of success, fear. And because we have the need for validation and approval, we just limit ourselves and say, oh no, I'll do this so that this person doesn't get angry. But then within you, you know it is not right. I just brought that up because you are the only one who can get yourself out of your current situation. People might be there to give you advice, give you their experiences, but it is down to you and you alone to make the decision whether to stay in that situation or to take a leap of faith and do something else so that you will change your situation for the better. So thank you.
Wow, thank you, Nelly. I think we have gone over our hour, or we're about the hour right now. And there's so much more that we can talk about communication. The topics are just coming here and there and everywhere. So I think we have to explore this topic again and dig more into word communication and get specific examples of how to communicate effectively in certain situations. So we can look at parent to child, or to colleagues, or to authority figures, as you've just rightly said, or to our partners and husbands, or people with whom we have relationships with. So we are going to explore more about this topic of communication. And at some point, I'll talk as well about how language is developed, how children develop language, and how we can help them develop their communication skills as well. So we want to thank you all for listening, watching. We do not know when some people watch this afterwards. Some people watch it on YouTube later on when we post it. And we just want to ask that you like and you share, as that you explore what we do on our website, www.handhandcommunitycic.com, and send us messages, join the conversation. Ask a question. If there's a topic that's burning in your heart that you want us to talk about, or that you want to come on the show to talk about, we welcome everyone to join us in this communication. In our country, we say, no one hand doesn't tie a bundle. We have to work hand in hand so that we build each other up, we grow together as a family. Nelly, any final words?
So I just want to say thank you so much, everyone, for watching. And like Aqua has said, we don't intend to come here every day and just be talking to ourselves. We are here to share our experiences because we want to build a prosperous and safer community, and you are our community. So text us messages on the topics you want us to talk about. If we've shared something that you want to get more clarity or more information or in depth, just like Aqua has said about the communication is a massive topic. It's not only communication we'll be talking about, but anything, but then we can't be doing it only ourselves. We need you. We need you to share with us. We need you to come up with ideas as well. We need you to come and talk, be on the live show with us, because it's not just us talking. So I just want to say thank you so much. And we look forward to reading your messages and getting in touch. So thank you so much and have a blessed evening.
Thank you, everyone. And we will see you next week with some